It is the year 2007, and a once peaceful neighborhood now trembles with hushed rumors. Inside that silent home lies the body of Cindy Crossthwaite, a devoted mother of three, struck down by a single bullet. The question echoing through every living room and whispered phone call is the same. How could such a violent act invade this quiet suburb? Allegations of a custody dispute swirl, pointing fingers in all directions. Friends and acquaintances share snippets of arguments, unspoken rifts, and a once loving marriage twisted by resentment. A shiver runs through the community. No one is certain where the truth ends and speculation begins. But one thing is clear, this story has only just begun, and its revelations will shake everyone to the core. Welcome to CrimeByte, where we explore mysteries beyond simple answers. Tonight, we uncover the harrowing story of Cindy Crossthwaite and the 17-year investigation that led to the conviction of Emil Petrov in 2024. Prepare for a journey that exposes the darkest corners of suburban life, where betrayals, secrets, and a single bullet changed countless lives forever. If you enjoy unearthing the truth, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification button so you never miss another investigation. For those who knew Cindy best, her world was defined by unwavering love and quiet generosity. She was the friend everyone called in a crisis, the volunteer who never missed a community fundraiser, and the neighbor who checked in on the elderly. When conversation turned to her childhood, she fondly recounted stories of growing up in a house where lively debates and Sunday dinners were sacred routines, teaching her from a young age about the importance of empathy and collective responsibility. Her warmth followed her into adulthood, manifesting in everything from the way she approached her job at a local retail store to how she raised her children. She believed there was always room for compassion, even on the busiest of days, so she made sure to show kindness at every turn. She met Emil Petrov in her late 20s, introduced through a mutual friend who thought their personalities would complement each other. In the beginning, there was a sense of possibility. On their early dates, Emil presented himself as calm, caring, and genuinely interested in the little details of Cindy's life. She felt seen. He listened when she talked about her aspirations for the children she hoped to have one day. He laughed at her jokes about how she wanted to name her future dog something funny, or how she once dreamed of being a chef, but ended up enjoying her job in sales. He also shared glimpses into his upbringing, a more reserved background that lacked the lively, close-knit feel of Cindy's household. She believed their differences might balance out, as her natural warmth could offer him the family environment he said he'd longed for. In their early years of marriage, moments of genuine closeness solidified Cindy's hope that she had found a partner for life. They tackled typical challenges, mortgage payments, car loans, the day-to-day stress of balancing work and family. But Cindy felt confident that they would navigate these hurdles. She told friends that she saw in Emil a man trying to break free from his own limitations. She found it endearing that he struggled to express his emotions, and she often insisted he open up about what weighed on his heart. But as time went on, she noticed patterns that worried her. He occasionally slipped into bouts of silence that stretched for days, cutting off all emotional exchange. These episodes eroded her ability to trust fully, though she kept those concerns private, believing marriage required patience. Despite any marital rifts, Cindy poured her heart into motherhood with vigor and sincerity. People admired her capacity to remain steady, even on the days when personal arguments tested her resilience. She ensured her children's lunches were packed with care, adding little notes that said, "I love you," or "You can do anything you set your mind to." She shuttled them to soccer practice, dance recitals, and parent-teacher conferences, always arriving on time, always listening attentively. Her colleagues at work observed her juggle these responsibilities like a seasoned performer, balancing schedules, budgets, and personal stress without letting her bright disposition dim. Some who only saw her casually would never guess that tension simmered in her marriage. Close friends, however, detected subtle shifts. They recalled times when Cindy's gaze would flicker toward her phone, as if anticipating a message or a call that might interrupt her day. She confided to one that money worries were creeping up, and arguments with Emil had escalated from quiet disagreements into nights spent in separate rooms. Yet she rarely showed her pain openly, preferring to shield her children, and in many cases, even her closest confidants. No one fully comprehended the burden she carried until much later, when it became devastatingly clear that her compassion and patience could not mend a marriage torn apart by distrust. People still ask themselves how a woman brimming with so much kindness ended up in a situation that ended her life so violently. They wonder how the seeds of conflict, so well hidden, could grow into one of the community's most shocking crimes. That unsettling question lingers in the minds of friends, neighbors, and a larger audience who would later follow her story. How did a nurturing, community-minded mother become trapped in a series of events that would lead to her own demise? In the first couple of years, Cindy and Emil presented the image of a cohesive family. Weekend barbecues, joint appearances at friends' weddings, and lively holiday celebrations. But the seeds of tension sprouted gradually. Minor disagreements over finances or childcare methods began to escalate into sharper conflicts. Cindy's circle of friends would notice a shift in her demeanor. She no longer mentioned cute stories about Emil's quirks. Instead, she seemed cautious when referencing him, often trailing off mid-sentence, as though deliberating whether to finish her thought. Those who had known Emil in more casual contexts described him as reserved, a man who preferred to stand at the edge of social gatherings rather than engage. He could be charming in small doses, flashing a modest grin or telling a self-deprecating joke, but he carried an unspoken heaviness that many attributed to a strict, unexpressive childhood. Cindy tried to encourage him, reinforcing that it was healthy to share anxieties rather than bury them. At first, he seemed to appreciate her efforts. Over time, however, he began resisting her attempts at emotional closeness, sometimes snapping at her in front of others if she probed too deeply into his feelings. Small misunderstandings intensified. Cindy wanted the children in bed by 8 p.m. sharp, while Emil believed in a more relaxed schedule. Cindy insisted on budgeting carefully, funneling extra cash into the kids' education savings, whereas Emil sometimes spent impulsively, telling himself he deserved a few luxuries after years of belt-tightening. These differences, while not unusual in many marriages, became amplified in their household. Relatives detected a layer of frustration that neither spouse could fully articulate. Some nights ended with Cindy in tears, uncertain why the relationship that once felt so promising was eroding. As the conflicts grew, Cindy confided in a close childhood friend that she was worried about the stability of her marriage. Yet, she told her friend she still believed time and open communication might heal the damage. She recalled how early in the relationship, Emil exhibited kindness that extended beyond surface niceties. He once rescued a stray cat on a rainy night, bringing it home to nurse it back to health. If he could show compassion for a vulnerable animal, surely there was hope he could show that same care to his own family. Still, the arguments refused to subside. They seeped into their everyday routines, overshadowing the joy Cindy tried to cultivate for the children's sake. Tension eventually crystallized around one crucial matter: the children's future. Cindy saw the kids' upbringing as her sacred responsibility and became uneasy at the thought that Emil's temper and unpredictable behavior might harm them emotionally. Emil, on the other hand, perceived Cindy's cautious approach as meddling or condescending. He felt belittled, as if she doubted his capabilities as a father. This mounting standoff pushed them toward the legal system to resolve an issue once handled in living rooms and quiet dinner conversations. Many acquaintances wondered if unresolved disputes could truly lead two people who once cared for each other to the point of no return. One haunting thought arises from their story. Could these seeds of tension, if left unchecked, grow into unimaginable consequences? When Cindy first mentioned formal custody proceedings, her immediate circle was startled. They had known about the arguments, but few realized the extent of the rift. She insisted that a clear legal framework might reduce conflicts over schedule, finances, and decision-making for the children. Emil reacted with anger, interpreting her move as an act of aggression meant to undermine his role as a father. Friends heard rumors of him storming out of the house, slamming doors, muttering about how unfair it all was. As days turned into weeks, the custody dispute swallowed any remnants of goodwill. Each side hired attorneys. Cindy's lawyer emphasized protecting the children's stability, asserting that Cindy was the more responsible parent. Emil's counsel, in turn, argued he deserved equal access, framing Cindy's concerns as exaggerated. The dispute spilled beyond closed-door negotiations into everyday life. School pickups became occasions for tension, as parents who once shared a loving bond arrived separately, barely acknowledging each other. Neighbors witnessed the uneasy hush that settled whenever Cindy and Emil were in the same space, even if only for a minute. Cindy's biggest worry was shielding her children from the brunt of these disputes. She wanted them to wake up each morning without the dread that their parents might launch into another argument. She tried to keep their routines consistent, same bedtime stories, same weekend outings, but children notice far more than adults realize. The older ones asked pointed questions. Why did Dad move out? Why are you so sad, Mom? Cindy offered careful words of reassurance, but she could see the growing confusion and fear in their eyes. The knowledge that her children were hurting pushed her to press forward with the custody case, hoping the legal system would enforce a structure that put their well-being first. Emil's anger simmered beneath every interaction, manifesting in late or missed child support payments, last-minute schedule changes, and a barrage of pointed remarks whenever he communicated with Cindy. Some relatives on Emil's side believed he felt cornered, cast into the role of an unfit father without fair consideration. Others pointed out that any father who truly cared would address the issues calmly rather than lashing out. The conflict drew invisible lines through family gatherings and social circles, forcing acquaintances to choose sides or feign neutrality. Between court hearings, the frustration, suspicion, and fatigue mounted for everyone. Cindy sometimes vented to friends about feeling trapped in a legal maze, hoping each hearing might bring resolution, but instead finding new reasons to feel anxious. Family members wondered if the couple could have avoided these formal disputes through counseling or mediation, but that possibility seemed long gone. And still, the lingering question emerged. In a battle for custody, how far might a desperate individual go when they believe the odds are stacked against them? On the day Cindy lost her life, she performed the same loving tasks that defined her as a mother. She woke her children, prepared breakfast, and made sure they had everything they needed for school. After sending them off with hugs, she tidied up the kitchen. A trusted friend recalls speaking with her by phone, scheduling an afternoon coffee date. There was no indication that her routine was shattered. She sounded tired, maybe a bit stressed, but no more than usual. At some point in the late morning, someone visited Cindy's home, and that encounter changed everything. Police reports later indicated no sign of forced entry, suggesting she either knew the person or was taken by surprise. Investigators believe Cindy might have still been in the midst of her chores, laundry half-folded, and grocery lists scrawled on a notepad by the fridge. At approximately the same time, a neighbor thought they heard a muffled pop that might have been a car backfiring. They shrugged it off and returned to their daily routine. Cindy's friend arrived for their planned coffee date a few hours later. When repeated knocks at the door went unanswered, she tried calling Cindy's phone, which rang on the other side of the locked door. Concern escalated when she found the door slightly ajar. Hesitantly, she stepped inside, calling Cindy's name. After venturing further into the house, she made a horrifying discovery. Cindy had been shot, and there was nothing anyone could do to save her. The friend's frantic call to the authorities triggered the rapid arrival of police, paramedics, and crime scene technicians who secured the area with yellow tape. Neighbors congregated on sidewalks, confusion and fear etched into their expressions. Many had known Cindy for years, watched her children play outside, waved to her as she returned from the grocery store. Now, their once tranquil cul-de-sac stood at the center of a nightmare. News vans arrived soon afterward, their reporters relaying preliminary details. A middle-aged mother of 3 found dead, circumstances under investigation. Whispers circulated about the bitter custody dispute and rumors that Emil had been seen lingering in the area days prior. People questioned if he was capable of such violence, or had someone else with a grudge appeared at Cindy's doorstep, hidden by the everyday camouflage of suburban life. That question weighed on the minds of everyone who learned of the tragedy. Could an ordinary father, pushed by desperation or anger, commit such a crime against the mother of his own children? In the immediate aftermath of Cindy's death, investigators worked tirelessly to gather information from anyone who might have insight into her final hours. They interviewed the friend who discovered her body, neighbors who might have seen unfamiliar cars, and even local delivery drivers who were in the area. Yet the initial wave of interviews yielded no clear witness account of the suspect entering or leaving the home. The only clues, for the moment, were a single bullet casing and the knowledge that Cindy was entangled in a contentious custody battle. Family members arrived in shock, some collapsing into the arms of police officers upon hearing the news. Cindy's children, who had been at school, were ushered to the care of relatives, shielded from the gruesome scene. The older ones asked questions. Was Mom okay? Why was everyone crying? And where was their father? Authorities had few answers to give. The horrific truth was that their mother had been killed in a place they considered safe, their own home, and no one yet knew who to hold responsible. Rumors began swirling in the neighborhood, intensifying and collecting unease. Some whispered that Cindy's murder must be connected to the custody hearings, while others speculated about a robbery gone wrong. A few insisted it was far too personal, pointing out the lack of forced entry. In hushed voices, they repeated their suspicion. Emil might have pulled the trigger. Without formal charges, the police refrained from confirming any suspects, focusing instead on collecting physical evidence and analyzing Cindy's phone records, diaries, and financial documents. Over the next few days, news outlets picked up on the custody angle, presenting Cindy as a devoted mother locked in a fierce battle for her children's future. They reached out to legal experts who explained how animosity in custody disputes can escalate. Viewers across the region felt a pang of sadness imagining Cindy's final moments. Her smiling photo flashed on television screens, accompanied by brief interviews with neighbors praising her helpful nature. Another question entered the public consciousness. Why would anyone harm a woman who, by all accounts, was caring and gentle? Emil's immediate whereabouts drew attention. No one could confirm whether he was out of town or simply avoiding contact. Calls to his phone went unanswered, further fueling speculation. Detectives considered him a person of interest, but they had no hard proof linking him to the scene. The lack of conclusive evidence meant that the initial phase of the investigation stalled, overshadowed by heartbreak and confusion. Some in law enforcement worried the case might face swift challenges if the trail went cold. The question that haunted the entire community was clear. Would the investigators discover a direct link to the perpetrator, or would Cindy's murder become a tragic cold case, leaving her family and the public grasping for answers? As days stretched into weeks without a solid lead, the momentum behind Cindy's murder investigation waned in the broader public eye. There were new crimes, new headlines, and a constant churn of stories demanding attention. While the initial shock lingered among those who knew Cindy personally, the rest of the world moved on, unaware that the wheels of justice were grinding to a near halt. Detectives still followed up on sporadic tips, but each call or email failed to yield groundbreaking insights. Emil remained elusive, his absence leading some to suspect he had fled the area under an assumed identity. Cindy's children went through a period of adjustment, living with relatives who tried to nurture a semblance of normalcy. The older ones carried unspoken guilt. Could they have prevented the tragedy by recognizing warning signs or intervening somehow? Classmates and teachers tiptoed around the subject, fearing any mention of Cindy's name might cause more distress. The quiet heartbreak of their day-to-day existence underscored just how pervasive the fallout from a single act of violence can be. The younger child had only fragmented memories, hearing bits of hushed conversations about an ongoing investigation that never seemed to progress. Support for Cindy's family poured in initially, with neighbors organizing meal plans and fundraisers, but as time passed, the wellspring of community assistance dwindled. Volunteers who once posted flyers or attended candlelight vigils found themselves distracted by life's demands. Some friends tried to maintain consistent contact with the children, offering emotional support whenever possible, yet a gradual numbness settled over everything. The unanswered questions weighed heavily, gnawing at the hearts of those who cared most. With every passing month, investigators felt the frustration mount. They had traces of evidence, a bullet casing, phone records, scattered witness accounts of raised voices or suspicious activity, but nothing definitive enough to file charges. Each time a new detective picked up the file, hope briefly flickered, only to sputter out in the absence of a real breakthrough. The unsubstantial leads, the vanished husband, and the lack of eyewitnesses made for a puzzle that seemed unsolvable. Cindy's siblings, unwilling to let the case fade, occasionally approached media outlets to reignite public interest. They gave interviews, shared memories of Cindy's devotion to her community, and pleaded for anyone with information to step forward. Yet time worked against them, eroding recollections and diminishing the sense of urgency. Many nights, Cindy's sister lay awake, replaying old conversations with Cindy, trying to piece together clues that might have gone unnoticed. Could there have been a chilling remark or a subtle threat that pointed to the identity of the killer? The question lingered without resolution, leaving them all to wonder if justice would ever arrive for the mother who had given so much of herself to her children and community. Years after the initial investigation slowed, a determined detective with a flair for methodical research decided to revisit Cindy's case. He had heard her name in passing and was struck by the sense of injustice. With advancements in forensic technology, he believed there might be fresh avenues to explore. At first, his request to reopen the file met with polite skepticism. Most believed the evidence had been thoroughly examined. Still, he persisted, eventually securing permission to comb through the bullet casing found at the scene and older forensic reports. The detective discovered that ballistic analysis had improved markedly since 2007, allowing experts to produce sharper, more detailed comparisons between the recovered casing and any weapon that had been logged or registered to persons of interest. Using updated scanning microscopes, a forensic specialist identified microscopic striations matching a handgun once registered in Emil Petrov's name. While not always conclusive by itself, the ballistic correlation lent considerable weight to the theory that Emil was indeed involved. Bolstered by this evidence, the detective traced any possible leads on Emil's whereabouts. Searching through banking information, property rentals, and even rumored sightings, he began assembling a patchwork timeline of Emil's movements post-2007. Small irregularities stood out: suspicious money transfers to unverified accounts, brief stints at various part-time jobs under different aliases, and a personal email account used sporadically in different states. Each step built upon the last, forming a more complete picture of a man seemingly on the run. Encouraged by this glimmer of progress, the police department devoted additional resources to the case. They re-interviewed old neighbors who revealed details they had previously considered too minor to mention. One person recalled seeing Emil's car in the neighborhood during odd hours. Another remembered overhearing him on a phone call where he spoke angrily about the ongoing custody battle. None of these individual statements had solved the case before, but collectively, they painted a far clearer story of events leading up to Cindy's murder. Momentum was finally on their side. The new ballistic match, plus these supporting witness accounts, offered a promising legal framework. One crucial question emerged among law enforcement officials and the public alike. Would these new findings be enough to locate Emil, place him under arrest, and secure the justice that had eluded Cindy for so long? With renewed zeal, investigators put out bulletins to neighboring states. They coordinated with federal agencies, cross-referencing names and photographs in case Emil had used aliases. Over time, they discovered traces of him, a faint trail of receipts, sporadic phone calls from unregistered prepaid phones, and rental agreements under suspiciously incomplete personal details. Each step forward brought them closer to cornering the man they believed had shot Cindy in her own home. The more the puzzle pieces fit together, the clearer it became that Emil had lived in a murky half-life, moving from place to place, never settling for long. A landlord in one city recalled renting a small basement apartment to a man who insisted on paying cash. In another location, a co-worker at a construction site vaguely remembered a silent individual who rarely socialized. None of them initially suspected he might be a fugitive, but in hindsight, they remembered how he avoided personal questions. Eventually, a break came when a retired police officer from another jurisdiction recognized Emil's photo on a local news segment about the reopened case. The officer recalled encountering someone matching his description, including a specific scar or distinctive walk months earlier. This vital tip reached Cindy's detective, who quickly verified the lead. A new flurry of warrants and coordination followed, leading to a carefully orchestrated stakeout at a location where Emil might appear. Officers found him in a small suburb, living under a false identity in a rented room at a rundown boarding house. He was apprehended without a dramatic chase, though tensions ran high. No one knew if he still carried a firearm or if he'd resist violently. But when law enforcement arrived with a team of uniformed officers, he surrendered, stunned by how they'd finally tracked him down. Inside his sparse room, investigators found items that further linked him to Cindy. Old photos from their wedding day, letters she once wrote, and a worn copy of court paperwork from the custody dispute. Many who had followed the case couldn't help but wonder what might happen next. Would Emil finally explain himself? Would he claim innocence? Or would the hard evidence speak louder than any denial he could offer? That lingering uncertainty hung thick as the day of reckoning drew near. When Emil Bill Petrov was formally charged with Cindy's murder, the community that once lived in quiet fear felt a wave of catharsis. Court dates were scheduled, and people followed every update, each new detail an affirmation that Cindy's story was not forgotten. The prosecution put forth a meticulously reconstructed timeline. Emil's growing frustration over the custody battle, his purchasing of ammunition similar to the bullet found at Cindy's home, and his disappearance immediately after her death. They built a narrative around motive, opportunity, and ballistic evidence newly discovered through advanced analysis. Cindy's family attended each session, stoic yet visibly emotional. Her eldest child, now a teenager, quietly sobbed when the prosecution displayed old family photos. Friends were called to testify about the tensions they witnessed in the marriage and the custody fight. A ballistic expert explained how the microscopic striations on the bullet casing aligned with a firearm registered to Emil. Additionally, a forensic accountant testified about suspicious financial transactions in Emil's accounts around the time of Cindy's death, suggesting he had been making preparations to flee. Emil's defense team argued that the evidence, while compelling, was largely circumstantial. They suggested that the ballistic match could be coincidental, or that the actual weapon might have changed hands. They attempted to frame Emil's departure as a breakdown caused by grief and fear, not guilt. According to their version, he had no reason to kill Cindy and was merely a scapegoat for a tragedy that remained insufficiently investigated. Observers whispered among themselves in the hallway, weighing the defense's strategy against the mounting pile of facts. The trial became a media spectacle. News vans lined the street outside the courthouse, broadcasting daily summaries. Cindy's sisters spoke to reporters about how they had prayed for this moment, but found it heartbreakingly bittersweet. They wanted justice, but the reality of the children's father standing accused of murder was a heavy burden to bear. Some members of the public saw the case as a commentary on the dangers of letting personal resentments spiral out of control. Legal experts pointed out that the jury's decision hinged not only on the ballistic evidence, but also on the psychological backdrop. How plausible was it that a desperate father, consumed by anger at the thought of losing custody, chose to violently assert control? Day by day, the gallery filled with a silent question. Would the jury see through any doubts raised by the defense? Or was there still a possibility that Emil might slip through the legal cracks? A collective exhale swept the room when Emil Bill Petrov was declared guilty. Cindy's relatives dissolved into tears, clutching each other in a bittersweet embrace. There was relief in knowing that the justice system held someone accountable for a crime that tore through their lives without mercy. The judge handed down a sentence reflective of the severity of the offense, ensuring that Emil would serve a lengthy prison term. Yet even in this moment of legal reckoning, the atmosphere was far from triumphant. The mother was gone, her children forced to grow up without her guiding hand, and their father was now forever labeled a murderer. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Cindy's siblings, who read a brief statement urging people to remember Cindy not for the horror of her death, but for the life she led, a life defined by compassion, dedication to her children, and kindness toward all. They thanked the detectives who refused to let the case linger in a cold file bin. They expressed hope that other families in crisis might heed Cindy's story as a stark warning about unaddressed animosity and the catastrophic harm it can unleash. In the weeks that followed, discussions about Cindy's story spread far beyond her neighborhood. Community leaders organized workshops focusing on identifying the early signs of domestic and emotional abuse. Some parents in the area reflected on how they handle conflicts in their own homes. Mental health professionals spoke on local radio programs, stressing how important it is for couples facing severe disagreements to seek guidance before conflicts escalate. Yet, the shadow of mourning remained. When asked about how they would move forward, Cindy's children offered fragile smiles that revealed both heartache and resilience. Friends who visited them spoke of their determination to honor their mother's values, compassion, empathy, and standing up for what is right. They wanted her legacy to be more than just a crime statistic or a cautionary tale. In that sense, they carried her spirit forward, keeping her memory vivid in the face of profound loss. And so the question remains, in a world where hidden fears and festering grievances can destroy even the most loving families, how do we spot the warning signs in time? Cindy's story stands as a reminder that beyond every legal dispute, every quiet argument behind closed doors, there may be a deeper darkness threatening to erupt. It compels us to ask ourselves if we are prepared to listen, to help, and to intervene before tragedy becomes irreversible. In the hush that follows every tragedy, we are left with the echo of a life forever changed. Cindy's story is one of heartbreak, but also of unwavering hope that justice can prevail, even after years of uncertainty. Her memory lingers in the living rooms and courtrooms of those who admired her resilience and devotion. As we stand here at the end of her story, we pause to reflect on countless families grappling with silent struggles. We owe it to them and to ourselves to recognize that every argument has the potential to escalate, and every private conflict can hold the seeds of turmoil. But this is not Cindy's legacy. It is a universal reminder that beneath the surface of everyday life, hidden dangers remain. By staying vigilant, nurturing open conversations, and seeking professional support when conflicts arise, we can prevent senseless tragedies. We honor those whose lives were cut short, reaffirming our commitment to protecting the vulnerable and healing the wounds left behind. As we conclude this exploration of a mother's life taken too soon, we invite you to stand against violence in your own communities. Share Cindy's story, speak out about problems, and offer compassion to neighbors, friends, and family members who might be hurting. Reflect on the warning signs missed and the outcomes that might have been averted if help had come sooner. Like this video, subscribe to CrimeByte, and hit the notification bell so we can continue revealing stories that matter. Together, we can strive for a future where justice stands firm and tragedies like this remain unthinkable.